Something shifted in the model data. And when something shifts in the model data, not in one run, not in one model, but across multiple runs on the most reliable forecasting tool meteorologists have, you stop what you're doing and you pay attention. Because that shift is the atmosphere telling you that what you thought was coming is not quite right anymore, that the story has changed, that the impacts are going to be bigger, broader, and more serious than what was being projected just days ago. And right now, that is exactly what is happening across the eastern United States. The models shifted, the track shifted, and for millions of people from the Gulf Coast all the way up through the Carolinas and into the Northeast and Midwest, the impacts just got higher. We are tracking double trouble this week, 2 separate storm systems, 2 completely different threat types. And they are going to work through the eastern half of the country almost simultaneously in a way that is going to make this one of the most complex and impactful weather weeks that a huge swath of America has seen in months. If you live in the northern half of the eastern United States, the Northeast, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, a significant severe weather outbreak is heading your way with damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes all on the table. And if you live in the southern half, the Gulf states, the Deep South, and now increasingly the Carolinas, a tropical system carrying an almost unbelievable amount of moisture is tracking toward you with double-digit rainfall totals that are going to make flooding the story of the week in your region. And that last part, the double-digit rainfall totals, the track into the Carolinas, that is the shift. That is what changed. That is what the latest European model data is now showing in not just one run, but 2 consecutive runs. And when the European model, the one forecasters have been calling old reliable for years, starts showing the same solution twice in a row, you do not dismiss it. You start preparing people for it. Let me walk you through both of these systems from the ground up, because understanding what is coming is not just about knowing that bad weather is on the way. It is about understanding why this particular setup is so serious, why the track shift matters so much, and exactly what the threat looks like for your specific region, so you can make smart, informed decisions before any of this arrives. Let us start with what is already happening right now, because this story did not begin with the storms that are coming midweek. It began today, right now. A frontal system is already working through the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, pushing a quasi-linear convective system, a squall line, through the region this evening. Strong winds, some small hail, and the possibility of a very brief isolated spin-up tornado cannot be ruled out, particularly across the Delmarva Peninsula. And up into the Philadelphia area, where the sea breeze is clashing with that incoming line of storms and creating a small but real pocket of enhanced wind shear. For Philadelphia and New York City, this squall line pushes through by around 10 or 11 tonight. New England gets it during the overnight hours. And while the severe weather threat does diminish as the night goes on and instability drops off, the storms themselves continue working through. Meanwhile, down south, across the Carolinas, through Florida, all the way out toward the Texas Gulf Coast, another round of showers and thunderstorms is firing up this evening. Gusty winds, frequent lightning, and heavy rain are all in the picture across the southeast right now. But here's the critical thing to understand about tonight's activity in the south. It is not the main event. It is the opening act. It is round 1 of what is going to be multiple rounds of heavy rain piling up across the same areas, over the same communities, over the course of multiple days. And that repetition, that relentless stacking of rainfall over the same geography, is exactly what turns a rain event into a flooding catastrophe. Tomorrow is the relative calm before both storms fully develop. Monday brings a quieter day across most of the region as the atmosphere briefly resets. But by Tuesday, the map changes dramatically. 2 distinct areas of energy light up simultaneously. One anchored near Corpus Christi in the south, one developing across the Midwest in the north. And these 2 systems do not just exist independently of each other. They interact. They influence each other's track. And the way they come together through the middle and end of the week is what makes this forecast so unusually complicated and so unusually serious. Let us talk about the northern storm first, the severe weather threat, because this one is being driven by one of the more impressive jet stream setups I have seen for this time of year. By Wednesday, a massive dip in the jet stream digs down across the country in what meteorologists call a trough. And embedded inside that trough are jet streaks, corridors of extraordinarily powerful winds moving through the upper atmosphere at extreme speeds. The positioning of these jet streaks matters enormously because of what they do to the atmosphere underneath them. When you draw a crosshair over a jet streak, the upper right and lower left regions, what meteorologists call the left entrance and left exit regions, become pockets of intense atmospheric lift. Air is forced upward, storms are triggered, and the stronger the jet streak, the more powerful that lift becomes. By Wednesday night, a textbook jet streak is positioning itself from Nebraska through Iowa and into Chicago. This is not a marginal feature. This is a powerful, well-defined corridor of upper-level winds, creating exactly the kind of intense lift that drives severe weather outbreaks. And by Thursday, that jet stream goes on what you can only describe as steroids. The winds roar through Ohio, Indiana, and up into the Northeast and New England, with the exit region of the trough providing even more lift on top of everything already in place. This is a multi-layered forcing setup. Upper-level lift from the trough itself, enhanced lift from the jet streak positioning, and shortwave energy rotating around the trough like pinwheels, each one creating its own pocket of additional spin and rising motion. And running underneath all of that upper-level dynamism is a low-level jet that is going to make the wind threat from the system exceptionally serious. The low-level jet is essentially a river of very fast wind sitting only about a mile above the surface. By Wednesday and into Wednesday night, low-level jet winds through the Ohio Valley are running at 85 to 90 miles per hour, just 1 mile above your head. That is extraordinary for this time of year. What happens when those extreme winds are overhead and storms are developing underneath them is that the storm downdrafts act like a funnel. They pull those screaming upper-level winds down toward the surface and deliver them as damaging wind gusts at ground level. Wednesday night through the Midwest, Indiana, Ohio, wind gusts pushing toward 50 to 60 miles per hour are expected. Columbus is looking at gusts to 45 miles per hour. Akron, near 42. Power outages are not just possible here, they are likely across a broad area. And then, by Thursday morning, that belt of strong winds shifts east into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Thursday is going to be a powerfully breezy day across a huge stretch of the East Coast. Wind gusts to 50, even 60 miles per hour in the higher terrain of West Virginia and Virginia. Gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour through much of the Appalachian chain. 40-mile-per-hour gusts registering even in Charlotte. Toronto seeing strong wind impacts as well. From the Carolinas all the way to Maine, Thursday is a day where wind damage, scattered power outages, and dangerous driving conditions on elevated roadways and bridges are going to be real concerns. And on top of all the wind, thunderstorms. Severe thunderstorms. The thunderstorm fuel values. The CAPE, the measure of how much energy the atmosphere has available to drive explosive storm development, are building through the Midwest on Wednesday and then shift east by Thursday. While the CAPE values over the Northeast are not off the chart, sitting in the range of 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram, they do not need to be extreme when you have the amount of lift and wind shear that is going to be in place. That boundary between the clashing air masses is going to act as a trigger, and the storms that fire along it are going to have access to everything they need to become severe. The setup for Wednesday across the Midwest and for Thursday into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic is a recipe for a very busy, very impactful middle of the week, and everyone in the path of this northern system needs to be taking it seriously before it arrives. But now let us talk about the southern system, because this is where the track shift happened. This is where the forecast got significantly more alarming over the last day, and this is where the potential for the most dramatic and most dangerous impacts exists for the largest number of people. There is a disorganized area of low pressure that has been sitting over southern Texas and the Gulf Coast, producing heavy rainfall across the region. Right now it is a broad, messy area of showers and thunderstorms, not particularly impressive on satellite imagery, not well organized, not something that looks threatening on its own. But that appearance is deceiving, because the problem with this system is not what it looks like right now. The problem is where it is going and what it is going to do when it gets there. And the latest data from the National Hurricane Center has bumped the odds of development from this system up to 30%, the highest chance of tropical development we have seen so far this hurricane season. The first name on the list, if development occurs, is Arthur. Here is how the European model, which has now shown the same solution 2 consecutive runs, sees this playing out. Through Tuesday, the system stays relatively stationary, spinning over Texas and the Gulf Coast, and continuing to dump heavy rain across the region. Areas near Galveston Bay and Houston are looking at 12 to 13 inches of rain from this system just through the early part of the week. That alone, 12 to 13 inches, is a flash flooding emergency waiting to happen regardless of what comes next. Northern Louisiana is looking at well over half a foot of rain. Southern Alabama, southern Georgia, the Florida Panhandle, corridors of 2 to 4 inches on top of already saturated ground. But then the steering currents in the atmosphere shift. The Bermuda High, a large area of high pressure sitting off the southeast coast, extends westward and grabs the jet stream, bending it in a way that redirects the track of the southern system. Instead of staying over the Gulf or drifting out to sea, the system gets steered northward. The European model shows it attempting to develop into a named storm over the Gulf, briefly getting organized just off the Texas coast, and then tracking toward Louisiana by Thursday. This is where the forecast gets genuinely alarming. Instead of weakening as it moves inland, which is what tropical systems normally do over land, the European model shows the system actually strengthening over land, deepening. A 1,000 millibar low pressure center over Mississippi, heavy rain slamming Birmingham, heavy rain hammering Atlanta, and this is the track shift that everyone in the Southeast needs to hear. The system plowing directly into the Carolinas by Friday into Saturday. A 996 millibar low pressure center positioned right over Columbia, South Carolina. A system behaving for all practical purposes like a tropical storm working directly through the Carolinas. Now, why would a system strengthen over land instead of weakening? The European model has a known tendency called the brown ocean effect, where it sometimes reads too much into surface humidity and dew point values over saturated, waterlogged land and amplifies storm systems more than would normally be expected. That is a real bias worth acknowledging. But here's what is important. When you look at the upper level setup over the system at that point, there's a jet streak positioned nearby that places the storm in the right entrance region, a zone of intense atmospheric lift. And the trough axis of the northern severe weather system creates additional upper level divergence spreading over the top of the southern system, generating even more rising motion and helping it maintain and even strengthen its circulation. The European model may be amplifying this somewhat, but it is not doing so without atmospheric justification. The science supports this as a real possibility. And what does a real possibility of this playing out mean for rainfall totals? It means this. The European model shows 10, 11, 12 inches of rain across parts of Louisiana and Texas just from this system alone. It shows corridors of 2 to 4 plus inches of rain working all the way through Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. It shows Charlotte getting pounded. It shows Columbia getting pounded. It shows the rainfall corridor pushing into Atlanta, into Birmingham, up toward Nashville. And even the GFS model, which is showing a somewhat different solution, agrees on one thing. The next 10 days are going to deliver enormous rainfall totals to a huge swath of the Southeast. Both models agree the rain is coming. They disagree somewhat on the exact track and the intensity. But the common thread between all of them is that the flooding risk from Texas through the Gulf states and up into the Carolinas is significant, it is growing, and it is not something to take lightly. The compound nature of this threat is what makes it especially dangerous. The northern storm brings severe thunderstorms, damaging winds and tornadoes to the Midwest and Northeast midweek. That same storm, system's jet streak and trough structure then potentially supercharges the southern tropical system as it tracks north. And that southern system piles inch after inch after inch of rain onto communities that have already been getting soaked by multiple rounds of heavy rainfall throughout the entire week. By the time the biggest rainfall totals arrive, Friday and Saturday, the ground across much of the Southeast is going to be saturated to a degree where even a moderate additional rainfall would cause flooding. The totals being forecast are not moderate, they are extraordinary. So here is what you need to take away from all of this. If you live in the Midwest, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Wednesday is a day you need to be weather aware from afternoon through the overnight hours. Wind damage and severe thunderstorms are the primary threats. Have your shelter plan ready. Know your county, have your alerts on. If you live in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, Thursday is your big day. Strong to damaging winds are the headline threat. Be prepared for power outages and make sure anything that can blow around in your yard is secured before Thursday morning arrives. And if you live anywhere from Texas through Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, you need to be monitoring this southern system extremely closely over the next several days. The rainfall totals being projected are not the kind of numbers you shrug off. Double-digit rainfall totals in a short period of time cause flash, flooding that moves faster and rises higher than most people expect. Turn around. Do not drown is not a slogan. It is a survival instruction. Do not drive through flooded roadways. Do not assume because you have driven a route 100 times that it is safe when there is water across it. Water that looks shallow can be moving fast enough to sweep a vehicle off the road in seconds. This track shift is real. The higher impacts it implies are real. The double trouble setup bearing down on the eastern United States this week is one of the more complex and more serious multi-threat forecast situations we have seen in a long time. Stay with the forecast, stay informed, and stay ready. We will be tracking every development, every model update, and every shift in the data as this week unfolds. Make sure your alerts are active. Make sure your family has a plan. And we will see you in the next update. Stay safe out there.